Primero vamos a dar paso a Paul, que va a explicar, va a explicar lo que es IASA brevemente y va a dar su opinión sobre este tema. Entonces, Paul, so whenever you want to start.
Whenever I want to start? Yep. Oh, okay, let's listen to you. Oh, okay. Wait a minute. Hello. Okay, this is a little like being in a weird movie. All right. All right. The Matrix needs to itself. Really, it does. Okay, the acoustics are a bit odd in here, but that's all right. Actually, will you? Do we need the mic for the recording? Is that? No, I'm just saying the sound. We don't need a mic for my voice. If it's for the. Okay, fine. Can we turn these way down then, because nobody needs to hear? Trust me, they can hear me in the voice across the street. I have that voice. I have special like 200 people with no mic before, so we're okay here. Hi, I'm Paul Preiss. I am the CEO and founder of IASA. We are the world's largest, most squirrely architect association. We basically were founded in 2003, 2002 in a very similar way to this. We held a user group meeting in Austin, Texas, and the topic was, what is architecture? For those of you who've been around architecture for a while, the speaker was Roger Sessions, who was a very well-known writer with the OMG, dealing with complexity back then. Since then, we've had over 60 chapters in different countries. We've got 80,000 to 100,000 people in our network, probably 14,000 members or so, and we've held conferences and training and certification all over the world. But what we mostly try to do is things like this. We get smart architects to come and talk about architecture. I was a practicing architect myself for many years and still am. I was a chief architect for Dell Pan Asia, so I had 14 countries. I also worked in large retail systems up to $100-200 million kinds of projects. I worked in product companies and consulting companies. It is a nonprofit. We host meetings, events, training, but mostly what we're trying to do is build a body of knowledge and a community of practitioners to help develop the practice so that you can solve problems in quicker, easier ways, as well as we can develop programs that help companies solve problems in quicker and easier ways using architects and answering today's toughest questions. Now, whether those questions are technology-based, like AI, cloud, and other emergent technologies, or they're business-based, like digital transformation and digital business models, we bring those things together in a working kind of practice that includes business, enterprise, software, solution, infrastructure, information, Agile, any kind of architect you can name. And we've cataloged about 28 things that people, 28, 29 things that people put in front of the word, whether that's SOA architect, which is my favorite, service-oriented architecture architect. It's just so recursive. Or it's integration architect, which is another new course we have coming out. We do work with large companies, so we work with companies the size of Chevron and Boeing and Dell and Microsoft, but we also work with mid-sized companies and mid-sized delivery-based companies, not just vendors. Our real target market is the practicing architect, whether they're consultant or internal to a non-vendor company. We've worked all over the world, as I said, and I'm very, very happy. Carlos Delgado's made massive progress here in Spain, as well as I want to thank Autentia for sponsoring tonight's event. The goal is to develop a conversation, not just a panel of experts, but a dialogue about Agile architecture and Agile architecture. So I'm going to speak very shortly. You're going to stop me, right? I'm the kind of speaker that, I don't know if anybody's seen John Zachman, but him and I can talk for about the same amount of time, which basically is, if it was still 1 a.m., we would still be vying for, you know, the next round of discussion. But I'm going to talk to you a little bit tonight about this notion of Agile architecture at scale. Now, Grady Booch likes to say Agile and architecture have a kind of healthy and unhealthy tension between them when he and I talk. And that is, architecture seeks to maximize value across an enterprise, or at least across a large space. Agile seeks to narrow decision-making to the edge where it is most accurate and most timely, to push decisions to the latest possible second. That tension is can be a very healthy tension, or it can be a very unhealthy tension. It becomes more and more difficult as you get more and more teams. So we've worked with, most recently we published an interview that I did with the CIO of Transavia. You should check the website, who has scaled Agile not just to his development and IT teams, but to his entire business. And that is a very powerful transformation because it transforms not just the IT process, but the budget, planning, investment, strategic processes, as well as marketing, sales, and all the other kinds of activities that the airline runs. And this is the kind of transformation that we're very interested in, because it's the kind that goes beyond a single team and scales across the entire organization. What we're trying to do then is capture the stories about what makes that work. And there's some very interesting takeaways in a lot of different cases where we see Agile at scale working. Now, during the talk and during the panel, we're going to have opportunities for the audience to ask as many questions as they'd like, or as many as we have time for. But I kind of want to set the stage a little bit for our panel and talk a little bit about what some of these practices are. Now, our goals at ISA are pretty clear. Now, this is not super clear. There we go. Our goal is to increase the notion of value management over the notion of feature management, and I'm going to get to what that means. I call it over function in kind of architect talk, but what we want to get to is a team structure and benefits realization structure that allows us to maximize value output as opposed to just feature output. If you will, is as high as feature velocity or other kinds of time to market. It's also to increase the rigor around innovation and experimentation. We want to increase the delegation of authority to the bottom of the stack at ISA, not to the top, while still increasing the overall value capture. That means we want to see a lot more innovation from the bottom up and a lot more experimentation from the bottom up where that makes sense. Now, keep in mind, we do work with companies that make the plane that you fly in. So, and we know from recent news that that's important that we think about safety as well as experimentation. But the point is, we want to increase this kind of innovative capacity out of the team, out of all the teams at the same time. And there's some missing elements in the pure Agile manifesto that seem to make this difficult. Finally, we want to add and keep the engineering rigor. So we don't want that what we saw in early, kind of the last 15 years of enterprise architecture, where what we were doing was removing engineering quality out of the team and moving it to the cheapest bidder, and putting all of the rigor at the architecture team, where we just threw things over to contract services. That is a non-working model, as well as the other model, which is just let the team do whatever it wants. There's a couple of clashes here that I'll help you get through, all keeping in mind that we take very seriously the Agile Manifesto's notion of interactions over documentation, right? Communication over documentation, people over process. So the ISA method as a professional association is very people-focused. It's very much about how good are you? How good are you? We depend on this in other professions. We absolutely depend on it. Anybody here who's been to a hospital depends on people models of skill as opposed to process models. I always say I can give my daughter a nail gun, but it doesn't make her a carpenter. It makes her a very big danger to the room, right? So we want to be careful that we don't just give tools to anybody that make it easy for them to destroy things, but we also respect the development, the team's autonomy and authority as much as possible. Some of the things that what we do are training, obviously, but you know, training doesn't get you. We do provide training, but what you really need are experiences. So if anybody here is a scuba diver, you know that they take you out. They don't take you out. They teach you a skill in the pool. You study, and then you do it in the pool where it's safe. Then they take you out to the little sand beach, and you do the skill again. Then they take you out a little further where your feet don't touch the ground anymore, and you do the skill again. Then they take you out on the boat, and you do the skill again. By the time you've done it the fourth time, they feel that you might be able to do it on your own. Now, at first, it's just 3 skills. Then it's 7. Then it's 21. Then it's 42. I don't know. 42 sounds right because that's the number of everything, right? So training is good, but we don't recommend just training. We also talk about mentoring and how the community itself in these skills. What we're trying to accomplish here is to embrace this notion of a lean, agile mindset and apply these principles, but in a way that maximizes value. Now, most of our SAFe teams in the world kind of thought they were going to be like this, right? Masters of the universe. Now, a lot of it feels a little more like this, right? You're kind of thinking away. Okay, we still have to write more code like this. Can't we just do the fun stuff? And a lot of the reason for that is because there is a lot of grunt work to do in the product development. It's not all fun. And having owned one of the biggest products in the world, the online store, I can tell you there was a lot of grunt work involved for me and my team. A lot of nights slept under the desk, a lot of things that didn't work. And we were about as agile then as we knew how to be. I think the most important thing is to start thinking about value. And really, connecting our architecture and our agile process together is about understanding the difference between form, and the grunt work related to function. Now, form in architecture is this, in building architecture and in software architecture, right? This is a lovely building. It's in it's a Walmart museum. It's in Arkansas, and when you go in, it's astounding. Now, recently we lost one of the great architectural wonders of the world. We haven't lost it completely, but we've lost it for a while. And you know that when you go into that space, you just stand there and are in awe, right? Go into Notre Dame, and it's amazing. But the truth is the vast majority of us talk about architecture as if we're talking about this. We're not talking about the outcome and the value. We're talking about the structure and the supports. Now, I can't sell tickets to this to anybody other than construction workers and engineers. And I probably can't sell enough of those to be able to make this worth it. Now, I'm going to do this just because it's really fun to do. Okay, but seriously, I want you to look. This is what we tend to talk about in Agile teams as architecture. Now, the problem with that is it doesn't give us this. It only, in most cases, gives us this. Because what we end up building are features over structural support for outcome. And this is where the notion of value comes in. Function can destroy form. I went to an office building recently to teach the senior architects there some of our concepts. And I asked if I could plug in my laptop. And they said, well, funny thing is we have 14 plugs in the room. And I went, oh, great. Where are they? And they were all in the upper ceiling in the back left. And there was this huge octopus hanging down of cables that ran snaked across the room. Now, the development company said, you asked for 14 plugs. You got 14 plugs. Does that sound familiar? It met requirements just fine because you didn't specify in your requirements that they needed to be evenly spaced and accessible from anywhere around the room. And that was easiest and cheapest. Get what you pay for. So too much of our agility is focused on features, right? Like, well, there's a space here to cook. I assume there's a restroom in there somewhere. Maybe not. I'm not sure about sleeping. I think I might sleep outside. If a stiff wind comes, you know, like I just don't want to be caught. But basically what we're saying here is architecture isn't the structure just. It's partly that. It's what happens when a product is deployed, not while it's being built. I always like to say, you know, if we look at the work of a product in development, it continues to go down while we build stuff, right? Now, obviously, if we get it out there at MVP as fast as possible, hopefully that starts to go up. But that date of deployment, whatever it is, first MVP, second MVP, it's still negative. We still spent a bunch of money on something that doesn't do anything valuable. But generally speaking, that's when the average team throws a party. And I like to say we're kind of throwing a party from the grave, you know, like we're way here underground and we're throwing parties. When does the business throw a party? If you're a startup CEO, when do you throw a party? When someone pays for the thing, right? When someone uses it and gives me money. Right, Carlos?
Yeah, it's totally right.
Yeah, right? Okay. So what we're doing in ISA is we're marrying this concept of value management with the value that we get from team autonomy by bringing architects down and into the teams. And it's really that simple. Because we see a lot of this in current Agile at scale. No way to improve systematically, underestimated dependencies, complexity, lateness, too little visibility, problems discovered too late, et cetera, et cetera. A very traditional list of problems in IT. And the reason that we're seeing that is because we still have the problem between product owner and dev team and delivery experts speaking different languages. And if there's one thing that architects have had to do, it's to start speaking the language of architecture form in IT. And that is the language of profitability or value. Now, there are lots of different elements of this, because we know that we don't all build systems for profitability. Many of us may work for the government. I've done work for the government, I've done work for military, and they will spend as much money as possible. Once worked with the chief architect for the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, and they throw parties when they spend money, not when they make money. If they get to spend an extra $1 billion, they break out the caviar, because their goal is to spend money saving the world. But for the rest of us, profitability, constituent value, what constituent value is stakeholder or user or partner value. You might think about that as usability or increased operational growth metrics. For our IT people or technologists, reuse and simplicity are a key value area. We also look at market size and market quality. So the iPhone made an awful lot of money for Samsung. The market itself and the dynamics of the market are very important in this. And what we do and what we're recommending at ISA is to take a notion that we're pitching effectively called healthy tension and bring it into your teams. And healthy tension is exactly what you have in a construction team. I grew up in construction. My grandpa started one. My dad ran it into the ground, so I know how to make one succeed and how to make one fail. I don't want to do either because that's really hard work in the sun. Healthy tension is exactly what you see there. You see a lot of experts in their particular areas arguing with each other. Now, if you ask the structural engineer what their opinion about the architect and the construction workers, they'll say they don't know anything about building buildings. If you ask the architect their opinion about the structural engineer and the construction workers, they'll say they don't know anything about building buildings. And if you hang out with the construction crews like I do, they will tell you for sure that neither the structural engineer nor the architect know anything about building buildings, because they're the ones that dig the ditches and lay the brick. Healthy tension means that we don't always see eye to eye. The lead developer on a project and the senior solution architect should be at odds. We should be arguing, but not in a way that is argumentative, but debating about the qualities that we're trying to create. You're arguing features, and I'm going to make you, I've nominated you the lead developer, okay? So you're arguing features and structure, and I'm arguing form and structure. And in between, we come up with the best possible engineered product that creates the most value. It's what I call making the right product as opposed to making the product right. And this overlap of skills is a fundamental component of self-organized and self-describing skills, because we know it works. It works on every building in this area. Every one of these was an Agile project. They had experts that were self-directed, self-organized, that still managed to meet building codes. We know that because it hasn't fallen on us, as well as create value for the owner, we hope. I mean, I really don't care, but at least they hope. And that means that what we do is we create program teams that are more balanced. We push architects even further into the teams as opposed to pushing them out. And if you look at SAFe and LESS and some of the other scaled frameworks, they've still treated architects as a scarce resource. And that's a problem, because scarce resources don't have the time to work on things that need to be worked on. Now, obviously, I am an architect association, so I have a little bit of an interest in the outcome, but we are a nonprofit, so it's not like I get to drive a Porsche because there's more architects in the world. What this means is that as a solution architect, I work with a maximum of 2 to 3 teams, that I am a proactive member of the team, not a reactive governance member. So I'm not here to say, you did it wrong. I'm here to say, let's do it this way. And we debate and we work together. Because the one thing that teams are terrible at is being the architect. I know, I've been the lead engineer and the lead architect on many a hard project, and I'll tell you, it rips your soul in half. Because you can't think about features and structure, which go down and in with the team, while thinking about form and outcome, which go up and out with the product owner. My job as the architect with Agile teams is to connect all the teams together. So the team of teams is connected in a daily basis while still being independent. And we do that in a very human and in a very structured way. But it also creates the least possible documentation and the most possible outcome. This specialist then, floating specialist as you will, enhances each team with value rigor. Basically what we do is we look at making key value decisions at the React versus Angular level, all the way up to the MuleSoft versus my service mesh, service network kind of level, while connecting that with the other teams in the team of teams, in the program, and at the SAFe portfolio level if necessary. What it does then is it puts us of value capture. It means that we're not done with the project until the goals of the project and the business case have been met, product, if you will, or service, have been met based on measurement. So here's the traditional team's requirements to delivery method, where we measure things by unit tests, code delivered, and feature checklists. But the real outcome happens at the full life cycle of measurement for the organization. We use value stories, value themes, and what ISA calls value cards. Are architecturally relevant stories, and to help trace through each iteration a value capture number. So that instead of saying, oh, we finished the following features, we say we made 100,000 for us, or 5,000, or 10,000, or some other measure of value that's important to your business. But what that means is, again, Agile teams need more architects, not less. Just keep it in mind that this is not about models anymore. This is about living people. This is about communication. It is about stakeholder management, and it is about being a part of helping the team succeed in an ecosystem that wants it to fail. Most of my Agile teams that I've worked with have when I come over, don't go, oh God, the architect's coming over. They go, hey, Paul, we're working on this thing. What do you think? And I'll go, because half the time it is. I don't do code reviews. I'm not the best engineer in the room. They don't think I'm trying to be. I still write code. Sometimes I deliver on key stories. But the point is, this scales. It scales through business architects. It scales through solution architects that work at the program, and sometimes even the portfolio level. And yes, there is even a role for chief architects of certain capabilities. We're not going to talk about the full deployment lifecycle, but as I've mentioned, there are ways to make this work from both a business and solution architect life cycle with rigorous artifacts that are measured and communicate and allow management to function the way it needs to, as well as at the portfolio level and the line of business level. All of this works together with what we call the extended team, where not just the architects make decisions. You got your chiefs and your enterprise and your other architects, but really the business technical leads and the project managers are also deeply involved in the value decision chain. So we become facilitators of value capture and innovation, and not owners, but much more from a bottom-up perspective. So there are lots of restrictions: culture, whether we believe in it or not, whether we're willing to invest in it or not, how innovative our business models are, whether or not we ourselves have the skills necessary to deliver on it as architects. You can't take a 70-year-old enterprise architect who wrote code in the 1950s and turn them into one of these. Okay, I know a couple that you could, but not many. You can't be an ivory tower architect and work in the But what you can do is disagree, as long as you disagree officially. Now, what I'll tell you is I have lots of people who disagree with us. In fact, the great joy of my job is putting them in a room and letting them argue. And then it's kind of, I don't know until they agree or disagree and commit. And that's the whole idea. So if you disagree, I like that, but don't just disagree silently. Come up after. Give me an article on what we need to be changing in the method and the model to fix it. And then you'll be part of the solution instead of part of the problem. So that's it for me. I'm really looking forward. I'm not going to monopolize this time. So these are the smart people in the room. So thank you for your time, and let's get going.